Hi, I'm Autumn,
And I'm Laura,
and together we're the
Boo
Boo Sisters.
Sisters.
Hello, Boo Crew. Welcome to season 2.
Woohoo, we made it. And this will be coming to you in January. So
Yes,
happy New Year.
right. What is everyone's New Year's resolutions? By the time you listen to this, you should be almost a month in. I personally don't do resolutions because
I don't
I don't,
either. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I think you
right.
just live your best life all the time. You don't need
Or
a new year for it.
yeah, it is a good time to start on goals if you haven't yet. And if you haven't yet, there's still time. Start today. If you would have asked me on January 1st of last year, oh, hey, if my future self would have been like, hey, you're going to be doing a paranormal podcast by this time next year, I would have laughed at myself in the face and
You
been
would
like, I
like,
have
of
no idea what you're
course
talking
I
about.
will.
Right. I've
I
been
have
like,
so much free
okay.
time.
2 kids, a part-time job, owning my own business. Yeah, that's gonna happen. But I'm glad it came to fruition. I don't know if we've told people how it came about. I texted Laura one night. I was watching an episode, some ghost show, I can't even remember, and I thought to myself, Laura and I love watching ghost shows so much and talking about them and then sharing hauntings that we've read or learned about. What if we just had those same conversations and just recorded ourselves doing it and then just put it out there for everyone to listen because it would be so fun? And so I texted Laura and I was like, hey, we should do a haunting podcast where we tell each other haunted stories. It would be so fun. And Laura's reply was something like, yes, that would be great. And that's where the conversation died.
That's not
And
true.
then,
It
no,
didn't
no,
die
no, it
there.
is. It died. It died there for the night. And then I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, and you texted me randomly, hey, I have a name for our podcast. We should call it the Boo Sisters. And people who listen, we can call them the Boo Crew. And I replied, yes, I love it. That's great. And then the conversation died again. 2 or 3 weeks later, we were like, well, we could really try to just record a conversation and see how it went. And then we did it. And then we got into it and we're like, crap, we probably need a website. And then we're like, crap, we probably have to figure out how to distribute this to podcast apps.
We should probably do a little research on what a podcast is and how to do
Right.
that.
And then we were like, oh, dang it, this is going to actually cost money. And then, oh, we say a lot of random things that don't really make sense. We probably have to edit this a little bit. And once we did the first episode, I think we were both saying to ourselves, we probably never should have started this.
I don't
And
think we ever said we shouldn't start it. I think it was
okay,
more
you're
like,
right.
wow, this is a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Right. And I
I
think we
thought this was
talked
just going to be conversations we recorded. Now it's like a
and
full blown other job that we're doing.
that we're doing for the fun of it. This was my thought afterwards. Oh, now wonder that podcasters, this is their job to do one episode a week because all of the editing time, all the website time, all the social media time, the marketing time takes so much effort that it is essentially a full-time job. So,
And then the next conversation we had is once we put this out there, are people going to actually listen or is it going to be like two listens and the two listens will be me and you?
right. And then we decided, you know what? It doesn't matter if anyone listens because we're enjoying doing it. And it actually is, in all seriousness, it's really fun because it allows Laura and I to have scheduled sister time, private sister time where we get to chat and have fun and catch up away from everything else in our lives. And I've really appreciated it. So, Laura, thank you for joining me on this journey of Boo Sisters. And I think we should thank everyone else too.
Yeah, thank you, Boo Crew, again for just listening and coming with us and being willing to listen to our antics as well as the ghost stories.
Right. And that being said, over the break, we did start a donation page on our website, boosisters.com. So if you have $1 or 50 cents or $10 and want to support this venture we're on, because it does cost a little bit of money just to have our site and our podcast platform, that's all we're looking to do really is cover some of our expenses to keep this hobby going. It would be so appreciated. But also, if you can't do that, simply listening and sharing our podcast with your friends is really all we ask of you.
We're still looking to get 1,000 listens on any single episode to
Right.
sponsor that road trip. So
And
tell your friends
as of
to
right
listen.
now, I think our top episode is episode 4. So share that one from
Of
season
season
1.
1. Can you imagine if there's like one really motivated person who just puts it on repeat when they're not even there just to like get the listen numbers up?
So you know what? Everyone should do that. Just kidding. Don't do that. But so my friend Katie, my good friend Katie, she shared it with her family. And her sister, her older sister, is not a fan of ghost stories. She doesn't like scary stuff, but she's so dedicated to helping us out and being a fan as much as she can be, that while she's at work, she will play an episode with the volume really low so she can't hear the scary stories, but so
Oh,
we get the so we get the listen, which is so sweet of her.
that's so nice. Thank you, Katie's sister.
Another thing we did over the break is for you that don't like scary, like Katie's sister, we added our boo scale rating to each episode on the episode pages. So if you go to any episode, then and look at Laura's story and then look at my story, each of those stories will have our boo scale from one ghost to five ghosts, five being the most scary. And so if you want to listen but don't like scary, you can simply look for the one and twos.
And
I
stay away from the 4 and 5s.
right. Don't go where there's lots of ghosts. Just stay
Or
where there's one.
challenge yourself and start in the 1s and 2s. And if you're brave, try a 3 or try a 4 and see how you feel about it.
Yeah. So that's another thing we implemented over the break. So hopefully that helps some people out who don't really like scary. But thanks again, everybody, for listening or for playing it and turning your volume down low. We appreciate it. Okay, so it's my turn, me, Autumn. My turn to go first.
Autumn, I
Woohoo!
choose you.
So on this episode, we could choose anything we wanted. Mine is super fun today. It's all about hauntings and not so much history. And I got the inspiration while we were away because my family and I did a fall trip to Disney World. And so I'm going to talk about the real ghosts of Disney.
So it's not the happiest place on earth anymore.
I
It's
still think
the
it is.
it's the scariest happiest place on earth.
So I have this friend that recently lost his puppy Lucky. And he told me that he dumped Lucky's ashes in different areas around Disney World. And
Oh,
I
I think
thought,
that's illegal.
yeah, it is illegal. That's why
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
saying my friend's name.
Oh, okay. Well,
But I thought it was so cute. And I thought, why wouldn't you want to be laid to rest in the most magical place on earth? So I do want to side note what Laura just said here. I do not condone this. It is illegal. It's dumping ashes against Disney policy, and it's also a misdemeanor to dump ashes in public location without a permit. Okay. But
That
however,
being said, probably a lot of people do it, right? I'm
yes,
guessing.
the reports I read said that Disney employees catch people dumping ashes anywhere from once a month to every week in the Disney parks. And these are the ones that they catch or notice on camera or that they see someone in person do it. Disney caught on to this trend, meaning they started watching for it in the early 90s. That calculates out to about 408 people spread around one park in total.
Oh my gosh.
The park opened in 1971, but cremation didn't become popular until about 1980. So if we calculate that this was happening before Disney caught on to it, from once a month from 1980, that's 528 people. And if you assume it's happening unchecked about once a week since 1980, that's 2,288 people.
Either way, that's a lot of math.
That's a lot of math. So it's between, so we know it's between 400 and like 2,500 people that their ashes got spread in Disney,
Also, that's quite a range.
right? And that's what they catch.
Imagine the cops of that area who have to, like, oh, we got another one, boys.
Yeah,
Another
but
misdemeanor of somebody who dumped ashes
right.
at the park.
But no one has actually been arrested for it. They've just gotten into Disney trouble, meaning usually you get kicked out of the park
Okay, I was like,
sometimes.
what's Disney trouble? Like Mickey Mouse comes over and scolds you.
Yeah. Oh, that would be like the worst public shaming. Okay. So several famous people have admitted to spreading ashes in the parks, including Whoopi Goldberg, who recently revealed she spread her mother's ashes on It's a Small World at Disneyland. Other favorite dumping spots include Pirates of the Caribbean and, of course, the Haunted Mansion. So you can be the 1,000th happy haunt. It's been happening so frequently that cast members have dubbed it Code Grandma. They have to call in a HEPA cleaning crew with a special vacuum to remove ashes. So your loved one actually ends up in a vacuum cleaner. Also, yeah, they come clean it up, right? You're on Haunted Mansion, you dump ashes. Okay, they bring in a vacuum. But what if you're on Small World or Pirates and it's in the water? You can't clean that up. They're not going to drain the whole ride.
They might. They do flush that out every so often, I think.
Well, I know that Pirates of the Caribbean smells gross in there, and it's supposed to be like because of the chemicals in the water. It's still, now I'm thinking the smell's actually from a bunch of dead people in there. Ugh. This all led me to think, okay, there's got to actually be real ghosts in Disney. I'm going to tell you about some of the most famous hauntings at the Disney parks in the United States. So both Disneyland and Disney World.
Okay, I'm
So
ready.
there's a lot of hauntings I'm about to tell you about, but I cut out probably about half of what I found. There's so many. Okay, we have our classic woman in white who haunts Disneyland. The woman in white is wearing a Victorian era clothing and is believed to have passed in the area before Walt Disney even built Disneyland. According to reports, she hangs out on Main Street, which is arguably one of the most congested and busy areas of the park, especially late at night after the fireworks. She scopes out the area for lost children, and she then takes them by the hand and escorts them to the baby care center, where ultimately they are found by staff who reunite with them with their parents. And this is reported because several kids have been asked, how did you find, this center? And they said, oh, this lady in a white dress helped me get here.
Hmm. So this
Interesting,
is
right?
major like hocus pocus vibes, except not the creepy version. Like, come
Like the
little
opposite.
children.
Yeah, the opposite though. Okay, then we have George. This is probably the most well-known of all the ghost stories in Disney World. So George haunts the Pirates of the Caribbean. As the story goes, a young construction worker named George fell to his death while working on a high area of the Pirates building in the burning fire room, which is one of the last rooms you pass through before the ride ends. To this day, cast members say good morning and good night to George over the PA system. So I talked to cast members during my trip, and they actually verified this story for me. They said if they do not acknowledge his presence, the ride frequently malfunctions or shuts down on its own. George has also made calls from the control room to the ride operators when no one's in the control room and then no one is on the other line. He's also appeared on ride monitors. His favorite hangouts are rumored to be near the pirate with the pigs, which is my personal favorite pirate. That's who I would also be hanging out with. Or under
Side note, if I
the yeah,
die, that's where you'll find
that's where you'll
me.
find me. It's by the pirate with the pigs. Under the bridge of the pirate with his leg hanging over it, and near the door, known as George's door, by the dog with the keys. So, a word of warning about George. There have been reports of guests going on Pirates of the Caribbean who have shout out his name or shout that they don't believe in George, only to find themselves get stuck on the attraction due to a breakdown.
Ooh, did you try it?
No, because I don't
You're
I
like,
don't want to
my
waste
kids
my
were on that ride.
right, and I don't want to waste my Disney days stuck in the Pirates. I think after a while that smell would make me a little sick, so I would
True.
not try that. There's
Not
a
recommended.
yeah, haunted mansion in Disney World. Many cast members working alone have said that they have seen a man with a cane riding the attraction late at night. When spoken to, he does not respond and then he disappears out of sight. Who is this mysterious man? Of course, no one knows for sure, but he is said to be the ghost of a pilot that died when his plane crashed in the 1940s into what is now known as Bay Lake, which sits right next to Disney World. In Disneyland, on the Haunted Mansion, the seance book in front of Madame Leota in the center of the table is rumored to be a real seance book with real spells in it. Cast members
Ooh.
say that the book is always turned to a different page in the morning from where they left it the night before.
Dun dun
So
dun.
then in Disneyland, also, a mom of a young boy was caught dumping his ashes in the ride because it was his favorite ride. And since then, riders have reported to cast members upon exiting the ride that they were concerned because they thought they heard a young child crying somewhere within the darkness of the ride.
If it was the favorite ride, I don't know. I would
But
hope
I
that
think
you
if
weren't
you're a young
crying.
child, you might not like it if you were eternally stuck in the haunted mansion, even if it was your favorite. But
True.
what do I know?
I've
Maybe he doesn't
considered
know that he's dead, maybe one of those things where he's like, I don't know why I'm stuck in this haunted house.
maybe a lot of times when there are like high pitched screams or whimpering or mewing sounds, I always think those could be animals that are in the area or that have
Mm,
gotten into a building. And how old is the Haunted Mansion ride? Because I feel like with how old it is, how do they know that birds haven't gotten in and nested inside or something?
it's pretty old, but I feel like Disney does a really good job of upkeeping their spaces. But yeah, I mean, someone would have to go in and debunk that. So,
We
okay.
need Disney debunking.
Someone should go ghost hunt Disney. I've never seen that before. Like after hours at Disney. That'd be so cool.
I'm pretty certain Disney would not allow
No, they wouldn't.
it.
But someone should try their best to make it happen. Maybe Disney World should be part of our ghost trip.
That makes logical sense.
Yeah.
That's somewhere I want on my ghost trip.
Okay. So at Disneyland and at Disney World, there is a train that goes around entire park, and it lets passengers off at different station points in the park. So it's a great way to get out of the heat or get off of your feet for a while. And there's usually more than one train um, the ride at running at any one time. So the ride operators have a switchboard in their command center that shows a light on the main board to indicate where all the trains are at any given time. So at Disneyland, the command center will show a train randomly appear in the far back corner of the park where there is actually no train from time to time. And then cast members have also reported hearing a train from that part of the park after hours when no trains are running. So cast members have dubbed it Waltz Train. Then Space Mountain.
Oh
Miss
no, this one's my favorite.
Oh, good. So Mr. One Way is one of the most well-known ghosts at Disneyland, and he lives on Space Mountain. He has been seen riding next to single riders on Space Mountain by riders themselves and by cameras. He has been described as a large man with red hair and a red face. Many believe that they have caught glimpses of him, and apparently he disappears before riders reach the final tunnel of the ride. So there's actually security footage of this one that I looked up where there's just a camera positioned where riders get on and off the Space Mountain car thing. The people load from the right, and you can see a mist come from the left and sit next to a single rider that got on.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's weird. And I know things are dubbed lately and we have AI and all these things, but it looks like I feel like when people do fake videos, it looks too good to be true. And this
Mm-hmm.
is so subtle that I feel like if someone was faking it, they would have done it more prominently. Does that make
You're
sense?
like, come on, you weren't even trying.
Right. So
Like
it's
this
interesting.
clearly
I
isn't
mean, you
fake.
can find it pretty easy if you Google Mr. One Way on camera. It's an interesting catch. Okay. It's a Small World. This is one of the strangest stories to me. It involves an apparition sighting on It's a Small World attraction at Disneyland. In 1999, guests were rapidly evacuated from the ride for an unspecified reason. However, afterward, a photo taken by a guest showed what appeared to be a person hanging from the ceiling of the ride, an anomaly that some speculate was a small child.
Hmm?
Some believed it was an animatronic. However, the odd positioning and appearance raised questions about its origin. The ride was closed to investigate claims from ridegoers so rapidly because so many people exiting the ride told cast members that they had seen someone hanging from the rafters. So they quickly shut down the ride to go investigate it. And nothing was ever found or reported. But that photo that a person took, I will post it on our episode
Mm,
page so you can see it.
I
And
want to see it.
yeah, there's definitely something there. I mean, and your eyes make out what you want to make out, but it's definitely shouldn't be there. So
Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know that I want to see it. That's
it
a
is
creepy one.
interesting. Yeah, it's the most interesting to me. So then we have some actual deaths that were reported at Disney parks that could cause some traumatic hauntings from unexpected accidents. The first one I'm going to talk about is on the Matterhorn in Disneyland. In 1964, a 15-year-old Maples was killed after she and her friend stood up in their bobsled on the Matterhorn. She fell out and was struck by an oncoming bobsled. To this day, cast members say that her spirit still lingers in the exact spot where she died. Ironically, 20 years later, in 1984, Dolly Young, who was an older woman, I think she was in her 40s, tragically fell from her seat on the Matterhorn as well. Dolly was alone in the back seat, and a child was alone in the front seat. In the middle of the ride, Dolly unbuckled herself supposedly to assist the child in the seat in front of her. She stood up just before the dip where the other track crosses over the track she was riding on. She hit her head on the bridge and fell onto the track. When the next sled came along, Dolly got ran over. The story is that they had to dismantle the track to dislodge her body. Despite thorough
Ew.
inspections, the cause of the malfunction remains unknown as to whether or not she stood up on purpose or fell out on accident because her seatbelt was not checked. Cast members have reported strange occurrences in the area where Dolly died, now known as Dolly's Dip, which ironically was the same area where the 15-year-old Maples had died earlier. When maintaining the coaster or doing daily walkthroughs, strange mumblings and sounds are heard in the area. One cast member report reads, "After the ride closes for the day, two people have to walk the track, one on each side of the mountain. You walk the ride starting at the bottom and working your way to the top. It is done to look for lost and found items. Every time I was unlucky enough to get a track walking shift, I had an uneasy feeling, like someone was watching me. I was always convinced that it was Dolly, and so I would often say hi to her. The feeling was always in the worst in the big cavern in the middle of the ride at Dolly's Dip, the spot where she died. In fact, the work lights in the tunnel near the dip always seemed to be burnt out." This sad story. So on the monorail in 1966, a 19-year-old named Thomas Guy Cleveland was struck by the monorail that connects the park to Disneyland Hotel. He had been trying to sneak into the park using the monorail track. A security guard spotted him. Then I'm sure he said something like, "Hey, you," which spooked the teen, and he ran in a panic down the tracks in the opposite direction and ended up getting hit. According to legend, the teen can still be seen running for his life on those same tracks. Rivers of America. In 1973, an 18-year-old teen drowned in the rivers of America after he tried to swim from Tom Sawyer's Island after the park had closed. This was all while carrying his 10-year-old brother on his back. The island had not been checked thoroughly before closing, and the kids were trying to get back home.
Oh man.
10 years later, in 1983, another 18-year-old teen drowned after trying to pilot a rubber emergency boat from the cast members area of Tom Sawyer's Island. Since then, teen boys have been spotted swimming in the river, and when help is called for them, they are unable to be found again. The People
Mm.
Mover. So, the People Mover in Disneyland ran from when it opened until 1995. When the ride first opened, a 15-year-old named Ricky Lee Yama decided to get out of his People Mover car as it was entering a tunnel. He tried to jump from car to car when he slipped and landed on the tracks. He was struck and killed by an oncoming car. In his defense, this ride is deceptively mild. It seems like a chill, flat ride. You're like, oh, I'll just take a little break from crazy rides and do this people mover. But it actually has really sudden, quick movements and goes pretty fast in some places. So I can see how a teenager would be like, this is such a slow ride. I'm going to hop to the next car to make it more fun because you're not even wearing a seatbelt on this ride. And then all of a sudden, it rapidly speeds up on you. Never jump out of a ride. That's the PSA of this episode.
That's been the crux of a lot of people.
Yeah, right. A similar accident happened on the People Mover in 1980 to 17-year-old Gerardo Gonzalez. During grad night, he was jumping from car to car when he too lost his footing and fell onto the tracks. His body ended up being dragged for a few hundred feet. An eyewitness report states that his body ended up falling off the tracks and he broke his neck during his landing. Ooh, yikes.
Yeah.
When the ride was still functioning in Disneyland, visitors, specifically blonde females, reported getting their hair pulled as they entered the tunnel where Ricky got hit by an oncoming car. And then we get to the pinnacle of the story, Walt Disney himself.
Mm.
So I recently read a book about Disney, and he was such a determined individual. He went bankrupt several times, but he had so much gumption that he could always pull in the best creators and animators, even after a dozen times of failing to create these cartoons that he truly believed in. His animations and this world he created was truly like everything, he cared about. So it makes sense that he would still be there after death. So Disneyland, the first park that was created, Walt had an apartment on Main Street, pretty much right as you enter the gates above a fire station. And this is where he lived during the park's construction to supervise and answer daily questions as the park was being built. And he stayed there often after Disneyland opened. He hosted celebrities and VIPs up there, did his tours from there, and stayed there on several occasions. And whenever Walt was in the park, he would light a lamp in the fire station window to let people and cast members know that he was there on premises. Anna Bees, who claims to see and sense spirits, has reported seeing Walt looking out the window of his apartment. There's also a famous story about a cast member on the cleaning crew who tried turning the lamp off after closing one night when she was done cleaning. She came down from the apartment and was headed out of the park to go home when she looked back behind her shoulder at the apartment again and the light was turned on. So she went back up again and turned it off. And this time the lamp turned itself right back on right in
Mm.
front of her.
Walt's light shall never be dimmed.
Right. So nobody has turned the light off since, and they keep it on as like a perpetual vigil to his memory.
That's cool.
Cast members also report frequent footsteps and knocking coming from the fire station apartment after hours. I'm sure it happens not just after hours, but after hours is when there's not noise, so you can hear it.
What do they use the apartment for now? Or was it kept all the same with all the same furnishings and everything, like perfectly
Yeah,
how it
I think,
was?
yeah, they just keep it as Walt's apartment. It's just his space, right?
So
He's just the creator.
then why though would they go up there like after hours? What would they
Right, for
be doing in
cleaning.
it?
I'm not sure, but I did read on one of the sites that they still host VIP tours through the apartment.
Mm,
Multiple guests have also claimed to see Walt waving from a distance around different areas of the park, including the bridge leading up to the castle. Upon scanning the crowd again, guests can't pinpoint the look-alike figure. As I read through all of these hauntings and read even more hauntings than what I just went into, I thought about it. And on a few of our other shows, we talk about how high levels of emotion could charge and hold energy. And so I was thinking if a battlefield that holds high levels of sadness and despair and fear can charge all this paranormal activity, why can't high levels of happiness and excitement and thrill?
I think they could.
I think so too. So if you have all of these thousands and thousands of people in the park every day who are hopefully having the time of their lives, right? They plan for years. They're like excited. It's all these kids that are seeing these wondrous things. You're going on all these exciting rides, and you have all this charged up emotion. I feel like that would give energy to any paranormal activity that's in the park. Additionally, there's so much actual electric energy running through the park for lights and fireworks and rides and kitchens, that if spirits can actually feed off electric power, it stands to reason that it should thus be easier to grab that from a place with so much of it, which also makes sense for paranormal activity. And then my last thought was that if we do actually get to choose where we haunt when we die, then I'm sure millions of people would choose Disney, right?
Right, because they have some of their best memories there.
Right. My question to you is
Which
when
ride would
you're,
I haunt?
close.
Oh,
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, when you're cremated, where do you want your ashes spread?
because I was
So
thinking
like
about which ride I would
same.
haunt already.
I mean, that's basically the same question, right?
Hmm. Well, it depends, I guess, because the rides constantly change, right? Like, say, Splash Mountain in Disneyland was turned into Tiana's ride, or I think it's
Yeah,
called
Tiana's
now.
Bayou.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, a ride that you may really like or really have an attachment to may not be that forever.
That's true. Or it might be
Um,
torn down. Tom Sawyer's Island is being torn out to make a Cars Land.
even though it's not Disney, I was thinking, of course, Harry Potter Land first in Universal.
Oh no, both Disney and Universal are going to come after us after this episode.
Yeah,
Be like,
we're
don't spread your ashes
we're
here.
gonna be banned from both places permanently. That's probably where I would go, but that's not Disney. So if I had to choose a Disney, which to me is harder to choose because I don't know as many rides and stuff that are there currently, but I would say rent the princess suite room in the castle and
Oh,
put my
that's
ashes in there somewhere.
like 500 million thousand dollars.
Perfect excuse. Where do you want to be put?
When we went as kids, I loved Splash Mountain. When we went just now, and it's now Tiana's Bayou, I love it even more. It is so fun, and it just makes me happy. So I feel like I'd want to be there. I didn't talk about this, but there's also weird occurrences at Splash Mountain Disney World when they shut down the ride and were reconstructing it into Tiana's Bayou. Weird things were happening to construction crews while they were on site. Tools were being misplaced and things were being thrown, and people think whatever spirits were in there were unhappy that it was being switched.
People who that was their favorite ride and they would put their ashes there and now you're
Right.
changing it.
Right. The 2000 ashes of people that were there.
Was the Indiana Jones ride, was that a Disney ride?
It's at Disneyland. It's not at Disney World. That's a great ride.
That I would put my ashes in.
Yeah, that's so fun. Like put it right when the ball rolls over
I would
you.
put my ashes in. Like I'm gonna put my own self there somehow. What am I saying?
Oh, right. Laura, what is your boost scale rating?
My boost skill rating is a 2.
Was there any story in particular that was more scary to you than the rest or that stands out to you?
The child hanging on the rafters or hanging from the rafters.
The small world after all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
that
like
makes
a
sense.
weird creature hanging upside down or something. It's probably not a child. I don't like that.
Also, why in the world would you haunt Small World? I think it's a cute ride. I like going on it, but you would go crazy if you were in there hearing that your whole life,
Or your
right?
whole death. Yeah, I don't even like the ride one time. But for the most part, I give it a 2 because the place is still genuinely happy and excited. And I think people that would be put there would be genuinely happy and excited. That's why. So, what
Okay.
would your boost scale rating of your own be?
My boo scale rating would be a 1. I just think the joy of Disney World or
Mm-hmm.
Disneyland overrides any scariness. And I mean, I guess if I was just going on stories, I would maybe bump it up to a 2. I do think some of the hauntings I investigated were very interactive, like George breaking down the ride if certain things didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's your turn, Laura, for your first story of the season.
Oh man, a lot of pressure. Mine, it's 100 million% different than yours.
Well, good. I'm good. Glad we started with the light one.
This time around, mine, I went back to doing a hotel. I wanted to do a haunting based on potentially where some authors maybe would haunt if we went on a road trip. And I would want to go where authors would be hanging out from history.
That makes sense. That would be fun.
So I ended up finding this place where not only authors haunt, but a lot of other creative people throughout history, well, really throughout the 1900s specifically. And it seems like a super cool place. It is the Chelsea Hotel.
Oh,
Have you
where
heard
is
of
it?
it?
No.
It's in New York City.
New York City. Okay.
When you think of Gothic peak roofs and tall, elegant chimneys, red brick mixed with wrought iron balconies, you might imagine an expensive manor somewhere in a far distant European country. But instead, these antique and eclectic architectural components make up the facade of a much different building, which is the Chelsea Hotel. Built at a full 12 stories tall in 1884, it was at one point considered one of the only six skyscrapers in the original New York City skyline.
Ooh, fun.
Isn't that crazy to think
I
about? So,
can't think.
first of all, there were only six skyscrapers and it was only 12 stories tall. So,
Yeah, I
this
heard too.
architect, his name was Philip Hubert, and he constructed this building originally as an apartment co op, which was meant to be a utopia for New York socialites, where everyone in every profession would be able to live in this self contained little settlement. At its peak, it was a mecca for creative types and adored by the masses. And those who helped build it, the construction workers, interior designers, plumbers, all those people, they were allowed to stay and have a place to live there. And then Philip Hubert, the architect, surrounded those workers with musicians, writers, actors, and all sorts of other creatives. The top floor alone was designed with artists in mind. There were 15 private art studios that looked out across the city.
Wow. I
Isn't
would
that
love that.
nice?
Yeah.
I want my own art studio.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that. That would be a major draw.
And then all of the creations that were made, the artist paintings, were hung and decorated the common spaces of the hotel. So it
Okay.
filled the building with all this culture and perspective and everything that way. It was really cool. Then in 1905, most of those apartments were broken up and made into luxury hotel rooms. And despite the changes, it continued to house long term tenants along with temporary guests. In the later 1900s, it was used as an artist colony where artists would meet and trade their creations for rent, food, and other goods and services. Some even lived there rent free through their creations. And that brought in tourists from around the world who would come to pay to live and or visit this essentially living museum where they had a chance to take in the art and also possibly meet the artists and like bump
Wow.
shoulders with them.
That's such a cool idea.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Yeah, super cool. So throughout the 20th century, it was known as a rest stop for rare individuals. That was the slogan, a rest stop for rare
For
individuals.
rare individuals.
Yeah,
It kind of sounds like a mental institution.
right.
To come to this amazing spa for rare
Hmm.
individuals. That's funny.
But those rare individuals included names such as Mark Twain, Thomas Wolfe, Tennessee Williams, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, Edie Sedgwick, Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Madonna, and a bunch of others.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a condensed list of the names that mostly I
Yeah.
recognized, but I'm
Right.
sure whoever's listening, if you're interested in knowing more, go and research this because there's just so much packed history, not just the stories I'm going to tell and the haunting stories, but just stories of the culture and the people and how they mingled and what relationships they had. It's this whole huge story.
So wait, I'm skipping ahead here, but is it still there?
Yes.
Oh, is it apartments? Or are you going to get to that? Am I spoiling it?
You're not spoiling anything. It so when it was turned to a hotel in 1905,
Uh-huh.
ever since then, it's pretty much maintained some status as a hotel. And there was a point
Okay.
at which it kind of fell into disrepair. But then when it changed hands and was purchased by somebody else, they started refurbishing it and making it back into like the splendor that it was. And now it's a hotel and you can go there. It's a luxury hotel. It's super cool looking.
Wow, that would be so fun.
They've tried to restore and maintain a lot of the original woodwork and furnishings and things.
Okay, maybe we'll go north on our ghost trip.
Yeah, so there's just so much history and so many names. Musicians have immortalized the hotel within their work, and these are just a couple. Leonard Cohen's song Chelsea Hotel Number 2, Lou Reed's Chelsea Girl, Jefferson
Mm,
Airplane's The Third Week in Chelsea, and Joni Mitchell's Chelsea Morning were all about the hotel or took place in the
wow.
hotel. Several movies have been made and or shot there, including Warhol's Chelsea Girls in 1966, Ethan Hawke's Chelsea Walls in 2001, and Abel Ferreira's Chelsea on the Rocks in 2008.
I haven't seen any of those, but they sound great.
Maybe we need to. I don't know. I'm okay. First of all, let me just preface this by saying I'm not recommending any movies or anything because I don't know if they have like swearing or content problems. I'm sorry if they do. I'm just saying this hotel has inspired a lot of creative people and have been involved in a lot of creations. But it's not just a rest stop for the living, rare individuals, but also perhaps those who are not. Perhaps whatever has drawn so many creatives to the hotel is what keeps the souls bound there after death. Maybe a sense of home or some kind of peace, or it could be it's just where they had their final moments. In 1912, due to the hotel's close proximity to the Chelsea Pier, it was utilized as a temporary home for survivors of the Titanic.
Ugh. What?
Can you believe that?
No. I
I
mean, there's
didn't
not
even
very
think
many
about
of
that.
those. Wouldn't they were all coming here? Wouldn't they have somewhere that they wanted to go?
Yes and no. Women were traveling with their husbands, and maybe their husbands had the funding or the contacts or the plan.
Oh, yeah, that makes
And
sense.
also, in the case of the people that I read about, and this next person I'm going to talk about, they would go there waiting to see if other boats came in or other survivors got rescued.
That is crazy that I never heard of that before. I did so many reports on the Titanic in middle school.
One woman named Mary became a widow when her husband didn't make it aboard a rescue ship. And according to the
Mm.
story, and just so you know, listeners, this is one that has no concrete evidence that I could find, but it's a story that's been passed down. She hung herself in her room on the fifth floor after waiting for his arrival and finding that they would not be reunited. So now she is seen wandering the halls dressed in 19th century garb, and one guest who their story was that they were drawn from their room in the night by the sound of sobbing, only to see a woman with her back turned beneath the arch in the hallway. She was crouching and hunched over, her shoulders shaking as the sobs continued. The guest approached when a light fixture behind him popped. He spun to look at the burnt out bulb, and when he turned back, the woman had gone.
Creepy.
That sounds like horror movie stuff to me.
Yeah. Like a dim lit hallway and there's someone there and then there's someone not.
And someone hunched over and crying.
Yeah, no, thank you.
She's also seen not just in the hallway, but sometimes in the corners of certain rooms doing the same thing. Most of the time, she's seen just crying. So from 1908, when a woman named Almira died from an overdose on sleep medication, there have been many accounts of suicide since then, some more violent than others. One such story is Atelka Graf, and this is one that has actual newspaper clippings. So she lived in the hotel as the daughter of a wealthy silk merchant. She fell in love with a handsome songwriter, but and ran away to get married and pursue their art together. Doesn't that sound like just the fairy tale?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the wrong guy.
But her husband fell into alcoholism and left her and her two children.
Oh
She
no.
had no choice but to return to the hotel to live with her parents in 1922, now with her children in tow. She traded work for room and board, doing chores and textile work. Day in and day out, she toiled away with no time for her own art and her hands becoming ruined from never ending use. So finally, in a fit of nerves, in 1922, she took a pair of industrial scissors used for cutting bolts of cloth and cut off her right hand.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
Then she apparently either threw it on or under the bed because the accounts differ. Her hand now. She threw that on or under the bed and jumped out of her fifth floor window.
This is real?
This is real. There's
I don't
newspaper
understand why
clippings
you
about
would
it.
cut off your hand.
Let me get to the end of the story and then, yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about it because so her fall was either broken, and this is where the story differs too, because I found two different accounts. Her fall was either broken on the third floor balcony or she fell all the way to the street. Either way, she died, and the hand, it was said, was found by her daughter. And so her ghost is now seen on various balconies of the upper floors and or through the windows in a white flowing gown, and some people report it's a woman with no right hand.
This concerns me.
I was freaked out initially just by the idea of somebody doing that kind of self-mutilation, what state of mind you have to be in to be able
Right.
to do that.
Like, yes, you can't be in your mind. That's the whole thing. You hear about those people who go hiking and they get trapped under a rock, right? And the only way to survive and get out is to cut out your leg or something.
Right.
That makes sense. But if you're just like, la la la, I'm gonna cut off my hand.
Why would you do that if you were thinking about committing suicide already or
Right.
had that in your mind? So my theory was just that it was like a statement she was leaving for her parents to say, you can't control me and make me do these chores and work my whole life. I'm going to leave you the one thing that you valued, which was my hands and the work I did. Yeah, we just don't know, right? That's the thing with stories like this, is it's so interesting to try to put yourself in the mindset, and we can't
Mm,
possibly. There's too many factors we just don't know. Was it more than just being fed up about the work that she was doing? Because if she was an artist and she didn't get to practice her art, maybe she really felt like, oh, my hands aren't of use to me anymore and I'm so sad about this. Or maybe she thought in her addled state of mind, if I cut off my hand, maybe I don't have to do the work anymore. And then she was in so much pain that she fell out the
couldn't
window
handle it.
or something.
Maybe that makes more sense. If I'm injured and don't have hands and I don't have to do it. And then she's like, oh, this actually really hurts. I'm just gonna die.
Or it was
Oh,
accidental that way, because if you faint, if you go outside for fresh air because you're in pain or something and then you faint and fall over the railing, I don't know.
oh gosh, it's all horrible.
Either way, yeah, it's all pretty horrible. And now she's said to haunt there. And so that's a little disturbing
Ugh,
because that's a lot of negativity.
yeah.
And again, much like yours, there are so many stories I didn't take and put in this, but there's so many suicides by people in all different manners. Dylan Thomas, the Welsh poet and writer, was living there in 1953 and he drank himself into a coma after fighting with his wife. Charles R. Jackson, the author of The Lost Weekend, took his life in 1968. And due to these and other writers who died in the hotel by one way or another, the sound of typing is often heard, like the click clacking in adjoining rooms late at night, as if somebody's
Ooh,
writing stories.
that would be cool to hear. I would
Yeah, I
not
kind
mind
of
that.
like that.
Yeah, residual sound, kind of.
Despite this lengthy list of suicides and even a few outright murders, such as a famous rock band photographer who was beaten to death in 1974, not all stories from the Chelsea Hotel are closed cases. So the most famous case was that of Sid Vicious. Do you know who Sid Vicious is?
No, should I?
I feel like doesn't it sound like maybe a rocker or like
I
some name that's made up
Yeah, I
because
was gonna say it sounds like a fake person.
it's a bassist from the Sex Pistols.
Oh, okay. That's a tongue twister. A
Yeah,
bassist from the Sex Pistols.
Sid Vicious. And his 20-year-old girlfriend at the time, Nancy Spungen. who were living at the hotel in room 100 on the first floor. On the morning of October 12th, in 1978, Sid awoke from a drug induced slumber to find Nancy stabbed to death in their bathroom.
Oh my gosh. Like he did it and didn't
Vicious,
remember? Right.
Vicious was charged with murder, which seems, matches his name. And he even admitted to it verbally to the police when they came. He was mumbling, I killed her, I killed her. But many believe he did so under duress or like the influence of the drugs and the confused, grieving state of mind he was in, just the shock. And those
But if he
especially,
blacked out, maybe he did do it.
but those especially close to him didn't believe it and they didn't think it was in his nature, even when he did do a lot of the drugs and things. Like, think about the number of people who would have spent time with him and was part of that culture doing those drugs with him all the time, his bandmates and stuff. Not
Right.
to say that you couldn't act out in a way that you hadn't before, but if you have normally been under the influence like that and people have seen you and how you act under the influence, just really chill and low energy and not doing anything and that kind of personality, and then to be accused of murder, that doesn't really fit, right?
Right.
To make matters weirder, 4 months after the incident, while he was out on bail, whether it was from guilt or grief or stress, or possibly foul play, he died of a heroin overdose.
Well, that was like, I feel like pretty common. So, but it could be any of those reasons.
There have been a lot of stories and different theories created from this. The events were portrayed in the 1986 movie called Sid and Nancy, which was shot on location at the hotel, which is kind
Mm,
of cool.
There's,
Can you?
I want to see that.
Yeah, me too.
That would be interesting. We'll go there and we'll rent the movie and watch it.
In their
That might
hotel
be
room. Just
that might
kidding.
be too scary. I'd take it back. I don't want to do
But
it.
we can't be in their hotel room
Oh,
because
okay.
it was demolished right after the murder and incorporated into another unit. The hotel owner and managers decided that they didn't want the morbidly curious fans coming in pursuit of information and that experience.
Oh, well, they got our number.
Well, we're not fans of Sid Vicious,
That's true.
right? It's
That's
a
true.
whole different time period. Back then, he would be, a high-end celebrity. And I'm sure a lot of people from that generation. Hey, if any listeners are from that generation, do you remember this in the
Do you
story, in the
remember Sid
headlines?
Vicious? Yeah,
Do you remember this happening? What's your take on it? Do you believe that he murdered her or not?
great question. Or someone else. Dun dun dun. So the murder, if it was a different person, could still be alive
Mm-hmm.
if they were young, like a lover that was scorned or something.
I'm sure he had probably more than one lover.
Well, I was
Rock
thinking of
rock
her
people usually
lover,
do.
like
Oh,
her
okay.
lover.
I was thinking of his like being jealous, like another of his fans or lovers or something.
It could be that too.
Since 2011, the Chelsea has been mostly empty, while its new owners have worked on renovating the entire building. However, a few residents remained. One of them, Elisa Bocanegra, was living there when Hurricane Sandy hit in 2012. And during that time, when the hotel was mostly empty and in the middle of a blackout where they had no electricity, she got incredibly bored and decided to trek to the room where Sid supposedly killed Nancy.
Okay.
Because why wouldn't you do that in the middle of a
Yeah.
scary blackout with no electricity?
Right. That seems fake.
Apparently, when she got there, she claims that what she felt in her core and how afraid that she was, whatever happened, she vowed never to return to that floor again.
I don't understand. I think that's a fake story. You wouldn't go to the scariest place in the pitch dark. That doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, it's pitch dark. It's kind of scary. Where should I go? Oh, I know the scariest place in the hotel.
I don't know. I think you and I would do it. I think
No
certain people
way.
would. Yeah, because it's already spooky. There's no electricity going on right now. There's nobody in the building. There's no construction going on. It's a completely contained environment more than it ever has been. right? Nobody's out on the streets. There's no honking horns and things because people are staying in and it's a blackout. That's the perfect time to not have the interference, to go and hear and see and feel what you do.
Ugh, I guess. It's hard to for me to think about doing that alone. I would do it with somebody, but alone, I don't know.
Well, it didn't say in the story if she was completely alone or not, just that she was
Okay.
living there and she went down. So it could be that she went down with a friend or a boyfriend or something. With all these various stories and deaths, it's no surprise that the hotel is so active. Brian Bothwell, a longtime hotel resident, indicated that every room seems to have its own haunting, and the hotel staff, in his words, had to address the ghost problem and move overnight guests from one room to the next very often. There was always a guest calling the front desk wanting to change rooms due to something they saw or felt.
Yeah.
And another quote that I took because I really liked it was from Patty Smith, who said, the Chelsea was like a dollhouse in the Twilight Zone with 100 rooms, each its own small universe.
Ooh, I love that too. It's very authoress.
Right? I
Yeah.
loved all the stuff I read in this whole thing. Oh my gosh, these creative people are mad geniuses. I love all their things.
Yeah.
Being the creative nature of some of the people who lived there and potentially, pass these stories on. I'm going to give you kind of a little taster of a bunch of other stories, but these don't have any proof basis, but these are things that people have said they witnessed or heard about. Okay.
Okay.
So reports have ranged from the ghost of a street urchin who kicks guests.
Who kicks them?
Yeah, like a little like street urchin child who kicks
Okay.
guests in the shins,
Okay.
to a vain Victorian woman whose reflection is primping in front of the mirrors in the hotel,
That's me.
and even a floating clown head.
Oh no. Nope. I can handle everything else in the story except for that.
So, other strange accounts that aren't specific to a ghost include hypnotic voices that lure you into a quote, womb like purple room.
Womb like purple room. There's a purple room on premises, like they know of it,
I
or in
don't
your
know.
mind. What does
That's
that mean? Like in your mind,
I
you're
think
in
it's
like,
supposed to be a physical room, that the voices have led you to this physical room that's like a room of requirement that just appears
oh
magically.
my gosh. Okay. I was like, well, they have to know where this
But
room is.
remember, what did a lot of these people do in this hotel? Drugs and stuff, right? So, like,
Yeah.
some of these things I think are a little crazy. There was also, somebody said, an energy that once handed a guest a glow in the dark frisbee, because that's
What?
just random and bizarre.
Okay.
And then there's Larry, a well known talkative hipster ghost that insists there's something under the hotel that gives it its creative power. And he claims that everything inside the hotel is real, while once you step out, everything outside is only an illusion.
What? He's on drugs for sure.
The hipster ghost is on
Yeah.
drugs?
Yes. That's like a matrixy, like, this is real, but out there is fake.
Right.
That's my favorite ghost so far in the world.
That Larry. Yep,
Yeah.
Larry's awesome. So, for those of you who are critics, as I mentioned already, some parts of these stories could be attributed to the aging of history into legends, the old building infrastructure doing crazy things, lights flickering on and off, and all that, and the prevalence, of course, of drugs and alcohol throughout its timeline, as well as the force of artistic imagination that is given the building of a life of its own. Because if you think about, again, all the writers and people that have been there, all the painters, all the creatives, your brain just naturally thinks differently. And I think we build stories off of little things that happen. But in the end, the Chelsea Hotel is to this day, in the words of actor Jamie Burke, a vortex, an artistic tornado of death and destruction and love and broken dreams.
Such great descriptions of this haunted, horrifying place.
So, what do you
Yeah.
think? Would you go? Would you want to
I
go?
would definitely go.
Would you
It would
stay
be
overnight
it'd be fun. Yeah, I would stay overnight there.
in all the rooms and
Uh,
all the floors?
maybe not the horrible, vicious murder.
So not the first floor.
Yeah, I mean, I would even stay maybe on that floor if there was different rooms, but I wouldn't stay like in the room that incorporated that room. We have to visit this place sometime. Maybe not on this road trip, but it sounds great.
I highly suggest you look at the pictures because they are crazy and awesome.
Yeah,
Even how it's been refurbished. I'm sure it was crazy and awesome back in the day
right.
too, but it's pretty cool now. So,
I love
Autumn,
it.
what
Yeah.
would you rate it on the boo scale?
Um, I would give it a 3.
Is it
I
because of the
feel
clown head?
well, the murders and suicides, those are so traumatic. They freak me out. I mean, the clown head is definitely the scariest part, but murders and suicides are a whole different level of emotionality, if you will.
Hmm.
What would you give it?
I actually agree. I think I would give it a 3 as well.
Okay. Yay, we gave it the same.
Hmm.
Yeah. What's the scariest part to you?
I would say the lady who cut her hand off because we don't know the full story of what went on there, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. And I think it's a little bit more scary when there's something going on in somebody's mind and we yearn to understand it and understand them and where they're coming from, and we can't.
Agreed. She definitely needed a friend or some help or
For
both.
sure. I think there's more to the story that we probably don't know about the situation with her parents. But when you don't maybe have the support system, like she initially had run away with this guy and he was treating her and her kids poorly, and you don't have that support system to really help you in the initial stages when your kids are young, I think that
Hmm.
that takes a mental toll too. So she was probably already in that place when she came back. I do think it's super interesting that both that woman, Mary, supposedly who hung herself, that was on the fifth floor, and this woman who took her life jumping off the balcony was also on the fifth floor.
Yeah, good call. Maybe I wouldn't stay on the fifth floor.
I think that would be a safe thing not to do.
I thought you meant a safe thing to do. Like,
To
oh, we
do.
could do it.
No,
We're
I think
fine.
that would be pretty
Yeah.
safe.
Well, great episode. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you for listening.
And as always, happy
Happy haunting.
haunting.